You're trapped in a world of fiction. White is a fiction and black is a fiction. But where you are, in your society, both are real, which means that you are trapped in a world of fiction. Do you understand me? And the real world is inaccessible to you, even while the real world impacts you. The real world impacts you, but you can never understand what's happening, because the real world does not operate according to the rules of your fictional world. You've never been anything but lied to. You've never been anything but misled and miseducated. You've never been anything but gaslit. You've never been anything but propagandized. So now your minds are full of wrong definitions, wrong categories, wrong metrics, wrong frameworks. You know, the world is in 3D, but you only see 2D or even 1D, you know, black and white. The first thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did when he created Adam alayhi salam was to teach him the names of things. Do you understand? Accurate understanding about what is. But your culture, your so-called civilization, erased that for you. So now you yourselves became vessels of ignorance. That's literally what you bring to the world now. That's the only thing that you bring to the world. No matter what your heritage culture was, no matter what your land of origin was, no matter where your ancestors originally came from, even if your ancestors came from the global south, now you yourself actually see your own people. You look at your own people in Africa, in Asia, in so-called Latin America, your own people from the global south, you see them the same way that your Western culture sees them. That ignorant, arrogant, flattened scavenger culture of Europe. And so now you make no sense. You yourself make no sense whatsoever to your own people anymore. Your original people, I'm saying. I said white is a job description, and the job is the maintenance of the social order, that particular social order, and the enforcement and the upholding of that mercenary value system. And in exchange for that, you get that psychological wage I told you, the psychological salary of having a status within that order. See, look at which so-called whites in America are notorious for being the most blatantly racist in that country and the most buffoonishly patriotic. Why, it's no one but the Italians and the Irish. The Irish and the Italian Americans, they got the status for doing the job, even if they themselves are still stereotyped in the popular culture of America. Drunken brawlers and mafiosos. Do you know, they used to call them inside out N-words. So now they're considered white. They're considered white because they carry the culture. Because they defend the system. They enforce and they reinforce the social order and the mythology and the indoctrination. So what about you? If you come from the people of the global south, if your people come out of the global south, if your heritage is non-European, non-Anglo-Saxon and so forth, if you are the descendants of enslaved Africans, if you're the descendants of dispossessed and displaced Mexicans, or any of the people of Central and South America, of Asia, of the Philippines, India, Middle East and so forth, and you're out here talking about the Constitution, the U.S. Constitution, the U.S. Bill of Rights, you're talking about democracy and equality and Western values and America the beautiful and whatnot, well, you're nothing but an unpaid white. You're unpaid whites doing the job, but you're not getting the status and you're not going to get the status. You're unpaid whites. Without saying. It goes without saying. So when you ask who is white in America, the honest answer is who is white is whoever the system needs to be white at any given moment. In exchange, like I say, for enforcing it against those who are not. It's not a heritage, it's a job description, you understand? And the job is maintenance and enforcement of a hierarchical, predatory, exploitative, inhuman, oppressive, and ruthless social order. That's the job. And the upholding and the affirmation of and the advocacy for and the perpetuation of a backwards, primitive, simplistic, dishonest, shallow, immoral, immature, animalistic, satanic culture. That's the truth. Listen to me, I told you that the actual descendants of the original people, the originators of that predatory, debased culture, the originators of that culture, the descendants of Europe, they're dying out. They're dying out. They're shrinking as a population. You know, they had to start, like I say, they had to start integrating other people into the super category of whiteness just to boost their numbers. Like I said, they brought in the Irish, they brought in the Italians, brought in the Poles, the Slavs, the Jews, and what have you, just to try to maintain the fabricated majority. Even though the WASPs themselves, they never really regarded these people as genuine whites. They never regarded these groups as genuine whites because white never meant skin color between Europeans, except in relation to non-Europeans. It was about skin color when it related to Africans or Mexicans or whatever else, or Asians and so forth. But between the descendants of Europe, their skin is all pale. So white never referred to skin color. It referred to a position in the social order, in the power hierarchy built by the Anglo-Saxons. Now, the ones that they hated in Europe, they still hated in America. The ones that they oppressed and exploited in Europe, they oppressed and exploited in America. But they gave them honorary white status because they played the role. They did the job. They played the role in relation to the descendants of non-Europeans and non-Anglo-Saxons. And like I say, they got a status from that. They got a status from that. They were able to circumvent the discrimination, circumvent the prejudice, and gain some sort of mainstream acceptance and mainstream acknowledgement. You know, they got their holidays and whatnot. But even with this addition to the category, even with adding these people to the category, like I say, they're still becoming a minority. They're becoming a minority in America. And their demographic numbers are falling globally. They're falling off a cliff. Which is why I need you to understand this transference that has happened. How those European marauders from 10,000 years ago, they got their culture uploaded into the cloud of Western so-called civilization and now downloaded into you. Downloaded into your mind. Because now you are the carriers of this culture. You are the carriers of this mentality, this perspective, this dysfunction. And it's going to live on in you. It's going to live on through you. The originators are going extinct. That way of looking at the world, that way of interacting, that way of dealing with things, dealing with people, dealing with situations, those frameworks, that's all going to live on in you. That's going to all be carried on through you. You are now the perpetuators of that American mythology and that American mindset, that American worldview, that American mentality. That's why I'm telling you that the system has never been your fundamental problem. The system itself is not the problem. The system was formed by a mentality. And now you have that mentality. Yes, you do. Even if you think, even if you are opposed to the system, even if you think of yourself as opposition, you think of yourself as revolutionary or what have you, even if you protest and you march and you read Marx and you have a Che Guevara t-shirt or what have you, even if you chant "Eat the Rich," you have not confronted the roots of the system. Think about what I'm actually telling you. The people who invented this system, whose culture gave birth to this system, who built it and who refined it over 10 millennia, the people who are the natural inheritors and the most authentic expression of that culture, they're disappearing. Their birth rates are collapsing. Like I say, their demographic weight is shrinking in their own countries. In their own countries, in their own cities, they're becoming minorities. The system that they built is consuming them the same way that it consumes everything and anything else. Anything and anyone. And in just a generation or two or three, the originating population will no longer be the majority anywhere. They won't be a majority anywhere. And yet the civilization continues. The so-called civilization continues because of you. That's the most devastating thing that you need to understand. The West did not win. The West did not gain prominence because of military power. They didn't win because of economic dominance even. These are just temporary advantages. They won because they colonized your mind. And a colonized mind doesn't need an army to enforce it or to maintain it. It maintains itself. It reproduces itself. It passes itself on to the next generation voluntarily. It passes itself on to the next generation enthusiastically and proudly. You do the work for free. You're the unpaid maintenance crew of a so-called civilization built by people who never even considered you human. You know, it's like if the slaves working on a plantation continue working on that plantation after the master's house has burned down with the master inside of it. You understand? Frantz Fanon wrote about this. He talked about this a lot. The colonized person who internalizes the colonizer's frameworks, he doesn't experience that as colonization. He doesn't think he's being colonized. To him, it's aspirational. To him, he thinks it's progress. He's becoming civilized. Self-improvement. So now the original colonizer is himself expendable at that point. Because the colonized do the job themselves. The colonized take over the role of the colonizer. See, once you colonize the mind, the body follows after that. Once the framework is installed, the person polices their own thinking. They police each other. They pass the mythology out, down to their children. They defend the institutions. They attach themselves to the institutions. They attach themselves to the framework. So now if you attack the framework, if you question the framework, it becomes you questioning or challenging or confronting their whole identity. You know, to challenge the framework is to challenge them. That's you. This is what has happened to you in the West. This is what has happened to you. See, you probably come from a people, in many cases, you come from a people who are most likely among the most sophisticated civilizations on earth before the Europeans arrived to destroy everything. The empire in Mali, the Mali Empire, at their height, they had a GDP that historians estimate represented roughly half of the entire wealth of the earth. The university in Timbuktu was operating centuries before Oxford was. You had empires in Southeast Asia that governed maritime networks that were so complex, extraordinarily complex. The Ottoman system of governance was administratively more sophisticated than anything that Europe has ever had. The mathematical accomplishments, the mathematical and astronomical traditions in the Indian subcontinent that preceded and exceeded anything that they had in Europe. The Chinese, they had gunpowder, they had paper, they had printing, they had the compass and so forth, had a functioning civil service, while the Europeans were still sleeping with their pigs and their goats. See, that's your actual heritage. That's where you that's the people that you actually came from. But now you're out here defending the copy and paste Constitution, the copy and paste American Constitution. You're defending Americanism. You know? I know many of you don't think that you are. You don't think that you are. You'll think, for example, I'm black, or I'm brown, or I'm poor. I know that this country was never for me. You'll say that. You'll say we've always known this. I'm not indoctrinated. I see it. I know. I've suffered in this country. Therefore, I don't have the same mentality as this country. Who told you? I'm asking, who told you that just because you suffer, just because you are oppressed, just because you're marginalized, just because you're excluded, that somehow automatically means that you don't think exactly like the people who are mistreating you? No, one does not automatically lead to the other. I'm telling you, you are disgruntled. You're disgruntled about your marginalization. You're disgruntled about the exclusion. And if you got included, you would join. If you had a way to join, you would join. You're not mad at the mean girls because they're mean. You're mad at the mean girls because they're mean to you. And you're still looking for inclusion. You know, you're out here arguing about which political party is going to better represent your interests. That's myth maintenance. You're out here performing allegiance to institutions that were built specifically to exclude you. And you think, you tell each other and you tell yourselves, if we could just get the right people, Brother Shahid, if we could just get the right people in those positions, then we can finally make America live up to its values. No, America has always lived up to its values. You see, you're still believing in the pretty words. You still believe somehow that America just took a wrong turn at some point. That it was really always supposed to actually be virtuous and wonderful, and something went wrong. Something went terribly wrong. No, I'm telling you, nothing went wrong. It's exactly the way it's supposed to be, the way it was intended to be. See, this is why you have to understand the staggering continuity of their primitive savagery across millennia. Because America is a part of that continuum. It's not a departure from that continuum, you see? Please, call things what they are. Call things by their right names. Western history is a rap sheet of continuous crimes and atrocities. They have been a scourge upon the earth. They were a scourge to each other first. They were a scourge towards each other first. And then they were a scourge to the rest of the world the moment they learned how to sail on a boat. You've been lied to your whole life. You've been lied to your whole life, and now you don't even know what honesty sounds like. It's a completely alien language to you. You can't speak honesty. You literally don't have the vocabulary. You know, have you seen when a Muslim da'i debates a Christian? I don't know if there's any better demonstration of Western cognitive dysfunction than those debates. Personally, I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of these sorts of things, this sort of format. Personally, I'm dubious about how useful they are. But if for nothing else, it's a very useful display because it's on full display. The complete Western incapacity for reason and rational thought, and their ability to even follow the thread of a conversation, the thread of a discussion for more than 3 sentences. You know, the Muslims come prepared. The Muslims come prepared. They know the Christians' book better than the Christians do. I mean, the truth of the matter is most of them don't even know what's in their Bible. Most of them don't even read their Bible. Meanwhile, if a Muslim so much as mispronounces one single letter when reciting the Quran, the whole the comment section is going to be flooded with Muslims correcting him. Alhamdulillah. Meanwhile, you all can have Pete Hegseth reciting the gospel according to Quentin Tarantino, and you've got every Christian in the audience bowing their heads in solemn devotion, subhanAllah. You got deacons, Christian deacons and whatnot, saying that they need to write a new chapter. They need to write a new gospel. They need to write a new book and add it to the Bible, because there's so much in that book that's problematic for them. But anyway, you have the Muslims, right? You have the Muslims going to these debates. They bring their evidence, they bring their arguments, and they're expecting counter evidence and counter arguments. They think that's how it's going to go, but all they get is deflection. All they get is emotional rambling. All they get is incoherent, derailing, whataboutism, complete gibberish. That's what they get in response. It's completely just a showcase of Western cognitive impairment, subhanAllah. A Muslim debating a Christian is like having Usain Bolt participating in the Special Olympics, I'm telling you. But no, it's not just the Christians. I know the atheists are going to get happy when they hear me say that, but no. You're the last people on earth who should get happy. You're worse than the Christians are. Honestly, the atheists are worse than the Christians are with their pretensions, their posing, their formulaic, predictable, infantile arguments. They're the most unserious people that you will ever meet. These atheists, these so-called intellectuals. I've said it before, most of what we know, what we recognize as the West's worst crimes, their worst atrocities, all of that savagery that's within living memory, at the very least, that was all under the banner of so-called secularism. Their most hideous crimes all happened after the Enlightenment. That's all post-Enlightenment. No, you can't argue, you can't debate. You can't. You can't argue or debate in anything like an honest intellectual manner. You just play word games. You never have any points, you only have tactics. That's all you bring. You have tactics and techniques. You have tactics and techniques specifically for hiding the fact that you don't have any points. And this is your whole discourse. Like I said, it's all unreality. It's all false. And it doesn't resonate with anyone in the world, not anymore. But now the most colonized minds are in the West itself. Like I said, that's you. The people who are the descendants of the colonized have adopted the colonizer mindset. While their own people, the formerly colonized people, in the formerly colonized lands, they're breaking free from colonization. But in the diaspora in the West, they have absorbed mental whiteness. Even while the physically so-called white in the West are dwindling. See, this is what colonization of the mind actually means. Psychological colonization, what it actually means. It's not that someone forced you to think this way at gunpoint. It's that they created an incentive system. They created or they engineered the conditions in the society so that thinking this way is the only path to survival, it's the only path to acceptance, it's the only path to anything resembling normalcy within the system. So then generation by generation, family by family, the original frameworks of your own heritage, they get replaced. Maybe your grandparents held on to something, maybe your parents held on to a little bit, but by the time it gets to you, if you were born and raised inside that system, there's almost nothing left of your original heritage, your original operating system. Just traces, just, cultural performances, food, music, holidays, what have you. Holidays, ceremonies, whatever, that have been completely emptied of any deeper meaning. They're just reduced to aesthetics. Costume without content. See, the originating culture, like I say, the originating culture is declining. So the so-called civilization as a European project is running out of Europeans who are willing or able to carry it forward. So what was supposed to happen, what the natural course of history would have produced without the mental, psychological colonization, is that as the European demographic dominance declined, so would their perspective, so would their values, so would their frameworks. And the rest of the world would have filled that space that was left by their absence. You understand? African frameworks, Asian frameworks, Islamic frameworks. The civilizational diversity that the West always suppressed and flattened, that would re-emerge as the West contracted. That's what should be happening. Instead, you're happening. You, the descendants of the colonized, the children of the enslaved people, the children and grandchildren of the dispossessed. Now you're carrying it forward. You're carrying forward this supposed to be dead way of thinking. You are now the carriers. This is why personally I don't get enthused when I hear about the statistic that Islam is spreading faster in America than anywhere else in the world. You hear that all the time. But Islam, as taught by who? As taught by what? Georgetown University? Taught by Yale, the Muslim Brotherhood, colonizer collaborators, Yankee Doodle Muslims, Muslims who hate the Arab world, Muslims who hate the Muslim governments, Muslims who want to topple all our leaders and destabilize our countries. A Muslim diaspora that has exactly the same colonizer mentality, that sees our people in the Muslim world as backward, that accuse the Ummah of being sellouts while they themselves are sitting up there in Houston and Virginia and New York paying taxes to keep America afloat. No, a Muslim diaspora of unpaid whites, you understand me? Adopting the same Western frameworks, the same hypocrisy, the same performative morality, the taqwa signaling. That's what we're going to have. So you have the demographic numbers that the West is losing. You have the youth population that the West doesn't have. You have the geographic spread that the West never had. And you're using all of that to perpetuate the exact same dysfunction. The exact same dysfunction, the exact same dysfunctional frameworks, the exact same civilizational pathology that was used to destroy your ancestors, that forced you to go over there in the first place. And you're not doing that because you're forced to. You're doing that because you opted for belonging and for assimilation to a people who do not and never will see you as people. See, the West doesn't need to survive demographically in order to survive civilizationally. It just needs you to keep believing in it, and for you to take the banner from them and carry on. And many of you do that, even if you don't know that that's what you're doing. Because we've seen this before. Think about the global South countries that achieved formal independence from European colonialism. Okay? And then they immediately organized their economies, they organized their legal systems, they organized their educational institutions, they organized even their foreign policy around Western frameworks. Not because a gun was pointed at their head, but because the people in those countries who had been educated in Western institutions, who had absorbed Western epistemology, who had been told that development meant resembling the West, that advancement in sophistication and civilization meant resembling and copying the West, those people became the leaders. And they led their countries back into the same orbit that they had formerly liberated themselves from. They turned colonialism into neocolonialism. You can't decolonize a country from the outside in. You cannot remove the colonial power and keep the colonial mind and expect any sort of a different result, different outcome. See, that's why you have to look at the underlying causes. You have to look at the assumptions, the definitions, the epistemological frameworks. The colonial power is the colonial mind. That is the power. If you remove the soldiers but leave the epistemology, you haven't done anything. You've done nothing whatsoever to liberate yourselves. This isn't my opinion. This is documented history, the documented history of post-colonial governance on every single continent on the earth. And the same principle applies to you individually inside America, inside the West. Your own liberation, if that word is supposed to mean anything real whatsoever, it cannot happen while you are thinking inside their frameworks, while you are measuring progress by their metrics, while your definition of success is their definition of success, while your understanding of what a human being is supposed to be, is supposed to want, is supposed to do, is supposed to value, is supposed to prioritize, is their understanding. You're never going to get anywhere like this. You understand? Your ancestors didn't come from a people with no framework. This is why I'm talking to you about returning to or reconnecting with your old civilization. Because your people came from civilizations that had sophisticated frameworks, coherent frameworks, profound frameworks for understanding what a human being is, what community owes its members, how you're supposed to prioritize, what life is about, and the relationship between this life and the akhirah, this life and the next. Now, their frameworks were not primitive. They were never primitive. They weren't sitting around waiting to be replaced by something better. No, they were deliberately, systematically, violently dismantled by the West, by the colonizers, because the colonizers understood that if a people have their own framework, they cannot be fully controlled. A people who know who they are cannot ever be fully convinced to become what you need them to be, what you want them to be. So they took the framework and they replaced it with their own. They replaced it with their own way of thinking. And now you yourselves have become the vessel of that replacement framework and walking around thinking it's your framework. This is why I say the most important liberation is not political. It's not even economic. It's epistemological. It's the reclamation of the right to think from your own foundation, your own frameworks, your own standards, your own definitions of what this life is for. Everything else follows from that, and nothing else follows without it. You can't build on a foundation that's not your own. And right now, most of you are building on theirs. I'm telling you, subhanAllah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is literally bringing their structures down, and you're over there trying to prop them up. See, when you see them, when you see the Americans, when you see, so-called white Americans, looking, especially liberals, when you see them looking for allies, you also see this to one extent or another on the other side too, on the right wing, on the Republican side. They're all looking for allies. And when you see them looking for allies, you think that's your chance. That you think that's your chance to gain white status, like the Irish, the Italians, the Slavs, the Jews, and what have you. Because again, you don't understand the transaction. You don't understand the transaction. And you don't understand the transaction because somehow you actually still believe that the system is what it says it is. And you believe that the culture actually believes in the values that they espouse. Bless your heart. And you think that every instance of unfairness and every instance of discrimination and every instance of racism and bigotry, you think all of those instances were some kind of glitch. It's because they're ignorant. It's because they don't know any better. It's because they're really decent, good-hearted people, but they just have a fear of the other. We just have to overcome that with understanding. We have to overcome their fear. No, that's never been the issue. That's never been the issue. Total compliance is the issue. Total obsequiousness is the issue. You understand me? They don't tolerate anything other than themselves. The transaction is for you to accept that and for you to enforce that. Look, I mentioned earlier about the loneliness epidemic. You can't separate that. You can't separate these things. You can't separate that from their scrounging around for allies. It's the same thing and for the same reasons. They have no friends, they have no relationships, and they have no allies. Because they're impossible. Because they're dysfunctional. Because they're self-absorbed, and because they're sociopathic, and because they're predatory and parasitic. They want friends, and they want partners, and they want allies because they need someone to feed off of. You understand me? They need someone to use. They need someone to extract from. And they need someone to blame and to throw under the bus when things go sideways. Please understand me. You cannot be allies with people who are not even allies to their own. You understand me? I told you, slaves, collaborators, and tyrants, that's what you have. And which one they will be will depend entirely upon who they are dealing with. If they can collaborate with the tyrants, they will do it. If they can be the tyrant because of relative power asymmetry in their relationship with you, they will be the tyrant with you. And they'll be the slave if the power asymmetry is not in their favor. How can you be allies with that? There's no principle here. Yes, okay, I'm talking primarily to Muslims, to my own people, and to the people of the global South. But Westerners and Americans, you should understand this too. You have to understand this too, about yourselves and about each other. Because you're not only this way with us, you're just this way. And you ought to try to understand that. And like I said, I know that many of you will object to what I'm saying, and you will tell me and you will assure me that you are the exception to everything that I'm saying. You know, the not all Westerners argument. But I've said this before. Maybe you are. Maybe you are, maybe you aren't the exception. But just the fact that you activate the exception argument in the first place as a reflex response to completely valid and completely accurate civilizational criticism indicates that you are not an exception whatsoever. That's the same old dishonesty. You know, that disingenuous pointing out of an anomaly in order to so-called disprove an entirely legitimate generality. Because if you were truly an exception to the rule, you would be agreeing with the criticism, not getting defensive about the criticism. But like I said, all they ever do is pursue self-validation. Never forget that. All they ever do is pursue self-validation. You absolutely have to know this anytime that you're dealing with them. I'm telling you, there's always an ulterior motive, and it's always the same ulterior motive. To get you to legitimize their falsehood. You know, including the falsehood that, for example, they believe in human rights. They care about human rights. They care about peace. They care about nonviolence. They care about equality. They care about tolerance. They care about the protection of children, the protection of women, or whatever the case may be. No, they don't care about those things. They don't care about any of those things. Not on a civilizational level, not culturally. No, they don't care about any of those things. There's no evidence whatsoever that they care about these things, and there is nothing but evidence that they don't care about any of these things. In fact, that they're hostile to all of these things. But they will, you know, for example, they will hurl accusations against, say, China or against the Muslim world or against Africa or what have you, whatever the case is. You're undemocratic. You're undemocratic. You oppress this group or that group. You don't have the freedom of this or the freedom of that, and so forth. And then you get tricked into proving to them that, no, we're good. We're good. We have rights. We have freedom. No, boss, we're as good as you. They trick you into that argument, and then mission accomplished for them. That's all they're interested in. They don't care about the rights of your people, not whatsoever. Not at all. They only want you to affirm the lie that they are people who care about rights. Because they do not. But they are obsessed. They are obsessed with making everyone pretend that they are a people who care about rights. And that's the only reason that they ever accuse anyone of any sort of a violation. That's the only reason they do it. Because no matter what it is, whatever the violation it is, whatever violation they're accusing someone else of committing, they already committed worse than that before lunchtime. Because this is the only way that they can assume any sort of moral authority, is by means of you playing along with the idea that they have any moral authority. I'm telling you, it's like there's infinite layers, subhanAllah, there's infinite layers of dishonesty. You have no idea. And like I say, especially if you live over there, and you've lived over there for generations, I'm telling the truth. You don't have any idea because you think the same way, because you are the same way. Even you calling yourself an exception is just another layer of the dishonesty. You have to understand, it's all fraudulent, all of it. It's all fraudulent across the board. Start to finish. Conservative, liberal, doesn't matter. It's a smokescreen. This is all part of why they are the way they are. The foundational reasons of why they are the way they are. They think virtue and they think morality can be best performed by, this way or by that way. That's all that is. That's all that your right and your left are. That's all. That there is no real right or left. You understand? There's just different ways of performing the theater of goodness. You understand? Instead of being good, Marx makes me good. That's the proof. Conservatism is the proof that I'm good. This ideology or that ideology is the proof. They want to refer character judgment to any sort of credentials or any sort of evidence other than actions. Right? I'm a socialist. That's the proof that I'm a good person who cares about the poor and the working class because I want them to get stuff via my advocacy of socialism. I'm a capitalist, so officially I'm a good person who cares about people's freedom to, pursue wealth in the free market so that they can get stuff. My way for people to get stuff is more moral than your way for people to get stuff. Meanwhile, the whole crux of both positions is material acquisition. That's the whole crux of it. You can drink, you can do drugs, you can be promiscuous, you can watch porn, you can backbite, you can blaspheme, you can lie, you can break promises, you can doom scroll, you can waste your time, you can be malicious, you can be petty, you can be deceitful, you can be a coward, you can be all of that, no problem. Your official ideology is a substitute for character. You understand? Performance. The morality of style over substance. There's no real belief in anything. Understand this. There's no real conviction that exists in the absence of external observation for them. Because that's the programming. The West never prioritized morality, never prioritized character, not at all. There's only ever been decorative, like I've said many times. And even if you want to be a moral person, the concept itself has been emptied for you, so you don't even know how to do it. So you see, this so-called civilization, this culture, which is inherently so stubbornly primitive, so underdeveloped morally, so underdeveloped intellectually, they're so insular, so provincial, so self-absorbed, it could only ever have spread through violence, and its violence is itself an element of that primitivity and that lack of development, that lack of moral character, that lack of intellectual complexity, that lack of intellectual depth. And that violence, like I said, has always also guaranteed that they never faced correction, that they never had to change. Which also means, paradoxically, that their violence has rendered them incredibly weak, incredibly feeble. No, it's a monstrously flimsy culture. As again is demonstrated by things like when they debate the Muslims. No, the violence and the power and the wealth that they accumulated by means of the violence and the coercive power has meant that they have never had to build themselves as a society. They never had to build themselves as a people. Understand, this is why you have the three archetypes in the West, the Western archetypes, the tyrant, the collaborator, and the slave. Because it's always about violence and coercive power. It's always about that. And if you don't have the advantage in any sort of power asymmetry, then you acquiesce. Slave or collaboration, not confrontation, not challenge, not rebellion, not even independent construction, parallel construction. Just kowtowing, just surrender, just bandwagoning. 4 out of 5 were serfs. Docile, passive, obsequious. This is the real Western disposition. When you don't see power in truth, when you don't see power in morality, and you worship only violent, coercive power, you as a people will always bow down. Comfort and convenience over conviction, always. See, I know that you'll hear me. Many of you will hear me. You like hearing me call out the West. But you only like it because you're not benefiting from being Western the way you would like to be benefiting from being Western. I know that your real issue isn't what the West is or how the West is. It's that you yourself are not at the top tiers of the Western hierarchy. That's the real reason. Just like the people who started America in the first place. You oppose tyranny when you are not the tyrant. See, you listen and you think that I'm talking like I'm your ally. Because you think that I'm against the people who are making your lives miserable. So you think I'm your ally. But I am. It's true. I am. I am against the people who are making your lives miserable. But you are those people. You yourselves are those people.
So guys, that is Shahid Bolsen for you, and I really recently found out that his name Shahid actually, and I don't know why I did not figure this out way early, because Shahid is actually a name that is Kiswahili is birthed from Arab, the Arab language, and the Shahid word actually means a witness. And so everything that Shahid Bolsen does over here, and we have done his videos countless times, we have discussed his ideologies, what he thinks, and the things that he stands for. And from all that, you can bear me witness that Shahid Bolsen is actually a witness for Black people. Now, he says it as it is. He doesn't fear anyone. He doesn't, think of whoever is watching them and judging them. He just says it as it is, and he makes it very, like he helps the people that are unable to express themselves, or those that fear that they will be judged by white people. And he consequently in his videos says that being a white man himself, and he has told us his race before, where he comes from, his roots. If you haven't, you can watch my previous videos, or actually go to his channel. It's called Shahid Bolsen. You can watch his videos and learn a few things from there. Now, he talks about whiteness and how white supremacy has made white people the way that they are. Now, this discussion usually becomes very serious when it is a white man that is actually talking about his fellow white men and calling them out for the things that they are doing. Anytime that it is a black person that is addressing these things, for example, if we're talking about racism, it's usually looked at as if this person is saying whatever they're saying because they're looking at it from the angle of a black person, and that they're projecting everything that is happening thinking that it is racism. That is what the white people keep saying whenever it's a black person that is suggesting these things. Now, it's a different story when it is a white man, your fellow white man, that is coming out and talking to us and talking to everyone about why you need to stop racism. And he explains exactly how this comes about and what white people need to do. Now, many white people do not like Shahid Bolsen because he almost like gives out all their secrets, and he explains everything from how they are taken care, what they're taught as children, what they're taught in schools, and how that affects and impacts them as adults. And in essence, whatever these people have encountered in the past as their first information is the fact that they are greater and better than black people. That it's very hard for you, and very rare, I mean, for you to find a white person that actually thinks they are equals to blacks. Yeah, they could be less in anything, they could be doing not so well in school, they could be doing not so well in life, but it doesn't hurt them as long as the people that are ahead of them are white people. It only becomes a problem when the person that is ahead of them, the person that is defeating them at life, is a black person. Now that makes them uncomfortable. That is something they need to address, something that they need to talk about, because why would you let a black child outdo you in anything? Yeah. Now that is racism, because you shouldn't be in a place where you think that simply because your color, the tone of your skin is not enough for you to presume that you're more intelligent than the other person, that you should do well at life more than the other person. That thing, I have said it countless times. I do not understand racism because it does not make a lot of sense to me. Because why would you be hating someone simply because their color is this? Yeah. And your color is white? Yeah. It doesn't make any sense. This has nothing to do with your intelligence. It has nothing to do with how you will succeed in business. It has nothing to do with whether or not your relationships with people, with family, with whatever will work. It doesn't. This is just skin, this is just melanin. And these people, the way they make it look, it's as if it's a very big deal, and that they expect downfall for black people every other time. Now, in the past, it used to work because they had these systems that were oppressing, overly oppressing black people. Black people could not go to school, they could not acquire wealth, they could not vote. There's a lot of other things that black people were prohibited from doing. And that made them be in a very awful position, because then it means that you do not have a voice, and you are basically just, there's no difference between you and a dog maybe, or an animal around the house. Yeah, There's no difference between you and that, because that dog cannot vote and you cannot vote. That dog cannot make decisions and you cannot either. So that was America in those days of slavery, in those days where our forefathers were, and they experienced quite a bit with the white people. All that racism of being hated simply because your color is different from theirs. And they have really never been so sorry about it, and they even keep doing it to make it worse. And when black people talk about it, it's offensive to them. They feel like black people should just be enduring these things without question, without saying anything. You should be comfortable. When a white person is oppressing you, you should be okay and let it go. Now, Shahid Bolsen has decided that he is not going to play part in that kind of white whatever. He has decided that he will point it out, he will explain things the way that they are, for those that are willing to learn, for those that are willing to make a difference in the world, those that are willing to change whatever their white people are known for. They will follow and adhere to whatever he's teaching, because his kind of teachings are, for example, what I would compare with what uh, Jane Elliott does. And it's just teaching you people, making you understand that, when you're talking about internalized racism, we're talking about you behaving in a way that is offensive to black people without you knowing. Yeah. Now, many people do not know that, and they're not willing to learn. Yeah, that is usually the problem, because if you are not willing to learn, then you're not going to learn anything at all. You're going to behave the same way, and people are going to call you racist still over and over. Yeah, and that becomes a problem, because then white people start thinking maybe blacks don't just like them, or whatever they do, there's never going to be a black person appreciating them. Now, on this channel, we appreciate white people that are doing something about racism, that are doing something to make a difference. Shahid Bolsen is one of them. Jane Elliott is one of them. And we have had a couple of them here that are speaking from a point of truth. They know whatever they are saying is actually going to be offensive to their own white people. But as long as it is standing for truth, they are ready to do that. And we have had a couple of them. Now, if you're one of them that that's how you live, that's how your lifestyle is like, saying it as it is, without caring if this is going to offend my people, my white people, then we really celebrate you on this channel. And thank you so much for being that kind of a human being, and bless your heart. Now, guys, I know you have thoughts, you have things that you agree on to what Shahid Bolsen has said, and you have things that you totally do not agree with. Now, I welcome all of you to my comment section to leave a comment. Let me know what you think about whatever he has discussed in this video, and what is it that you agree totally towards, and what is it that you don't agree on, and why. Yeah, you can leave a comment, and I'm glad you people watch me and you leave comments. Most of you actually do that, and I really appreciate you and your effort. I know that you don't have to do it, but you try to make time to do that for me and for the rest of us that want to have that conversation ongoing in the comment section. So, guys, if you're watching me for the first time, my name is Furaha, and I'm kindly requesting you to subscribe to my channel. Now, it's not forceful. What you need to do is go back to my videos, the other videos that I have done. I keep doing a lot of videos every single day, so you can watch some of those videos. And if you fall in love with this kind of content, if you love this kind of discussions, if you like these kind of topics that we handle over here, please consider subscribing, become part of this amazing family, and you're so, so, so welcome. I'm so happy to have you on my channel today. Returning subscribers, I can't say it enough. I can't emphasize it enough. Thank you so much, guys, for the support, for the warmth. You have been so nice to me for the past close to 2 months that I have been on this channel. And you have been giving me massive, massive support. When I say massive, I totally mean every word I say, because you have given me all the support in the world that I need, and you have been there sharing my videos, liking my videos, giving me a super thanks, giving me, like leaving comments. It takes a lot for actually someone to watch a video and then go ahead and leave a comment. And for some of you, you actually leave a very lengthy comment, And just so you know that I have seen your comment, and I really appreciate from the bottom of my heart what you're doing for me and for my channel. I keep liking the comments. I might not be able to like respond to all of them, but I do try to at least leave a comment, to at least leave a like, so that you know that I was here and I saw this. And it doesn't matter if you wrote something that is against what I've said, against me as a person, or against the black people or Africans. Doesn't matter. You leave a comment, and I'm happy that you have interacted on my channel. So guys, I will see you on my next video. I hope that you're keeping safe from wherever you're watching me from. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and I will see you on my next video. Bye for now.